We're delighted to have you here in Barcelona to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Iberian Wine Tours.
Thank you very much.
A particularly good reason that we're pleased that you're here is I once upon a time worked in the Académie du Vin, which inspired me in the world of wine. I think you've said sometimes it's one of the things, if not the thing you're most proud of in the world of wine. Why are you so proud of the Académie du Vin?
Well, the assumption is the thing I'm most proud of is the Judgement of Paris, but that was set up by l'Académie du Vin. So had there been no Académie du Vin, there would have been no Judgement of Paris. And the Académie du Vin was set up to reply to a demand from my actually American clients in the very early days of Cave de Madeleine, who they used to come by the shop, my little tiny shop, and I used to give them a taste of the new wines that I bought that had come in, and run them through them a bit. And they said, if you could put this in a more structured manner, we'd love to learn more about wine. We'd love to take a wine course. And I'd become friends with John Winroth, who was the wine correspondent for the Herald Tribune at the time, Swedish-American. And he was teaching wine courses in the back of cafes to junior year abroad students. And so we just combined, and the place next door came up to rent. It was a locksmith shop, and quite what you need a locksmith in the middle of the Madeleine for, I don't know. Obviously you did at some point. And so we took it over on 2 floors and created l'Académie du Vin, but I didn't intend it to be called l'Académie du Vin. My application was for l'Ambassade du Vin, the wine embassy, because I never thought of myself as an educator. I thought of myself as an ambassador for wine, and still do, a communicator. But that was taken by somebody, and so we then applied for l'Académie du Vin. And an academy in France is something that you aspire to belong to at a great age, and not a school. And since no one had dared register l'Académie for anything, certainly not l'Académie du Vin, I got through. So that's it.
It was a magical place. I remember the Cité Barrier. There was a delightful ambience about the whole place, and particularly about the Académie du Vin and the Cave de Madeleine beside it. What are your happiest memories of the place and the time?
Well, I mean, I think finding the shop with a friend of mine, we were walking up to have lunch in the Moulin du Village, the restaurant which I subsequently bought, which was basically the beginning of the end of my empire. I should not have gone into the restaurant business. And we passed this shop, and I said to him, Christopher, I said, that's my dream, a little shop like that. I know exactly what I could do with it. He dragged me in, and I looked around the shelves, and the lady owner behind the counter said, may I sell you something? Or would you like to buy anything? And my friend said, my friend would like to buy your shop. And it happened to be for sale. It had been for sale for 2 years. So we did a deal, but then she got second thoughts because her husband had been a very good caviste and he died of cancer. And she couldn't see how a young Englishman who didn't speak very good French could quite carry on the reputation of her late husband. So I did a deal with her. I said, look, Madame Fougère, here's the deal. We're in October. I'll work for you for 6 months for nothing. And if after those 6 months you think I can honor the memory of your late husband, I'll take over the shop. Well, of course, during those 6 months, I learned exactly what I wanted to do with the shop. I got to know the clientele, I got to speak better French, and so on and so forth. And on April the 1st, April Fool's Day, she gave me the keys to the shop, and I put an ad in the Herald Tribune which read, your wine merchant speaks English, call Stephen Spurrier.
And the rest, as they say,
the rest is history. Yeah.
So you mentioned that at the beginning, the Judgement of Paris, which of course is perhaps the thing you're best known for. How do you look back now on the Judgement of Paris in terms of what impact you think it had? What difference do you think it made, looking back?
Well, I mean, it made a tremendous difference to California. That was very plain. It also, in hindsight, or it also, within a year, made a great difference to France. And as Aubert de Valenne who was one of the judges over at Leonard Lombardy, said in much more vulgar French than the English translation, it was a much needed kick in the pants for French wine. France, it was the first chink in the armor of French wine. And France needed waking up, and this woke them up. And there's no coincidence that the first vintage of Opus 1, the joint venture between Robert Mondavi and Philippe de Rothschild, was 1979. And I'm certain that Philippe de Rothschild would not have gone into business in a joint venture with Robert Mondavi had it not been for the Judgement of Paris.
And looking back, the Judgement of Paris had an enormous impact. I think perhaps by implication, underlying that was the Académie du Vin that enabled it to happen.
Well, I mean, we were terribly respected. We hadn't asked for a cent from anybody, and normally, I wouldn't say organizations have their hands out the whole time, but we were known that we were completely self-financed. We were the only game in town in terms of education in Paris, and so when we began to put together the list of 9 judges, the top palates in France, we got them. And so that was Paris, Académie du Vin, top wine palates. It was, the Judgement of Paris was an event whose time had come. But they were only going to just taste French wine, California wines. That's what they had been invited for. And about even 10 days before the date, I told Patricia Gallagher, my partner in Académie du Vin, whose idea it basically was, who created the 76, it'll be the bicentennial of the American Revolution. And I said, Patricia, I'm very worried they're going to judge these wines and they'll damn them with faint praise. And it's not what we want. What we want is recognition of quality coming out of California. She said, okay, what are you going to do about it? I said, I'm going to turn it into a blind tasting with the best wines from my shop. From White Burgundy is the best wine from my shop in Claret. And she said, that's not what they're coming for. I said, well, I'll ask them. So when they turned up, I said, you've come to taste California wine. And I personally thought it would be more interesting if we could taste them blind against the comparative vintages from Burgundy and Bordeaux, but I can only do that if you agree. And of course they said, pas de problème. But I mean, if they said, no, we don't want to do it, then it wouldn't have happened. But the real importance of the Judgement of Paris, the real importance of that tasting, was that it created a template whereby unknown wines of quality could be tasted blind against known wines of quality. And if the judges were themselves of quality, their judgment would be respected. And that completely leveled the playing field. And so I don't know whether you've heard of the Berlin tasting, Eduardo Chadwick, and it goes on the whole time. But no one had quite packaged it like that.
So you opened the door to this new approach that opened the door for wines that were perhaps lesser known or respected.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the, well, now the world of wine is so open with blogs and the internet and everything like that. But communications were much slower in those days, and blind tastings didn't happen. I mean, the wines were tasted blind, but the idea of a comparative blind tasting from comparing iconic wines from one country against the same great varieties but unknown from another country hadn't ever happened before.
Did it close some doors for you in France?
I was physically thrown out of Ramonnet Prud'hon cellars in Burgundy when I went to take up my allocation a few months later, but apart from that, not much, no.
So fair to say in the long run it was worth it?
Well, it was my 15 minutes of fame, put it that way. I mean, it's simply not going to go away. George Tabor's book said, The Judgement of Paris, the tasting which revolutionized wine. And I think that's pretty much the truth.
A great legacy to have. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much.